welcome back to the channel. My name is Pelumi. If it's your first time coming across this channel, you're welcome. On this channel I share DIY sewing and craft tutorials, so if you're into that kind of content, please consider subscribing, like the video, share the video, and leave a comment. Today's video is an exciting one because I'm introducing to you my second digital PDF sewing pattern. It is called the Temi pattern. It is a midi length wrap dress with a lapel color. Well, not really a color because it's like half of a lapel color. I thought this was really nice and unique. It's giving you like modern vintage trench coat vibe. It can definitely work in summer and winter weathers. It's currently fall in the US and other countries in the northern hemisphere, so this is also a great dress for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. I definitely have my Christmas and Thanksgiving and even New Year's dress already. It's definitely going to be the Temi dress. It also comes in 3 lengths: the midi length, the mini length, as well as the top length, and has a drop shoulder puffy sleeve. I love exaggerated sleeves. It's very similar to the Azania dress, but instead of a cuff you have an elastic cuff. What else I want to say? And also, yeah, the skirt has a wrap skirt style or a front button placket style. So in today's tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to make the front button placket style for the skirt. It's very simple. I say that the pattern is for a confident beginner, but trust me, even if you're just a beginner, you can definitely sew this with a little tea of patience. Okay. It's very simple to make and you definitely enjoy creating such a unique style for yourself. If you're interested in learning how to make this Temi dress, please continue watching the video. Ask a question if you don't understand any of the steps in the comments and I'll definitely answer your question. Okay, so let's get into today's video. I hope you enjoyed and find it helpful, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys. Oh yeah, if you're interested in purchasing the Temi pattern, the link to the pattern will be in the description box. So do take advantage of the 20% discount if you also sign up for the newsletter. Okay. Yeah, and let's get on sewing together. To make your Temi dress, you need the Temi pattern, of course. I have a video showing how to print, assemble, and use PDF patterns. So check that out if you're not familiar with PDF patterns. Other items you need are about 10 medium to large sized buttons, tailor's chalk, a little bit of interfacing, elastic band, measuring tape, matching thread, although I'm using black today because I want you to see what I'm doing. An optional item are also fast snappers. I'll tell you how to use that. You also need pins, and lastly your fabrics. I'm using this teal and khaki color cotton drill so that there's a contrast and you can see what I'm doing, like I said. And the pattern is designed for woven fabric, so you can use any light to medium woven fabric for this pattern, but preferably 60 inches wide fabric, especially for sizes 18 and above. Now it's time to cut out the fabric using the pattern. Ensure that you follow the cutting layers and instruction manuals that will be sent to you when you purchase the pattern. The first thing to cut out is the skirt. There is only one pattern piece for the skirt, and you're going to use this for the front and the back skirts. Pin the pattern on the fabric and cut one pair first, and then cut the other pair. Also, don't forget to match the notches for the pocket and also for the waist. After cutting out the skirt, you need to cut out the other pattern pieces like the bodies, the facings, and the waistbands. To cut the full sleeve, cut the sleeve pattern in half on the mark indicated, and you're going to spread this out by the measurements indicated on the instruction manuals according to your size. However, the spread should be measured only at the top of the sleeve and not at the bottom. So after cutting all the fabric, here are all the pieces you need. You need the front skirt button placket. You need to cut 2 on the main fabric and the interfacing. You also need the back waistband. You need to cut 2 pairs on the main fabric and 2 on interfacing. Then you need the front waistband. You need to cut 2 pairs on the main fabric and 2 on interfacing. You need the pockets. You can cut 2 pairs on the main fabric or on a lining fabric. You need to cut the back and front facing, cut 2 each on the main fabric and on interfacing if you want. And you also need your sleeve, and cut 2 on the main fabric. Your front and back bodies, cut 2 on the main fabric for each. And finally the skirt pieces, the front and back. And do note that none of the pieces are cut on the fold. Okay, so that's all you need. Now let's get sewing. Step 1 is to iron the interfacing on the placket, the 2 front waistband pieces and 2 back waistband pieces. The other 2 waistband pieces should be left uninterfaced. Optionally, you can also interface the facing, the front and back facing, depending on the weight of your fabric. But my fabric is quite thick, so I'm not going to interface my facing pieces. Step 2. Place the back bodies right side together, pin along the center back and sew in place. After sewing, press and finish the raw edges of the seam with an overlocker or a zigzag stitch. You need to do this same process for the back bodies facing as well as the back waistband as well. At this point, you can also sew the center back of the skirt so they can have it out of the way, or you can leave it and focus on the skirt as a whole later. After sewing up the center back seams, place the front and back bodice pieces right sides together and sew at the shoulder to create a shoulder seam. After sewing, press the seam open and finish the raw edges as well. And then you need to repeat this for the facing pieces as well. That means you're going to place the front and the back facing pieces right sides together, sew it at the shoulder seam, and then finish the raw edges and press. To finish the raw edges of the facings, you could just overlock it and leave it as it is, or you can turn it in twice and hem it. So the next thing, with right sides together, align the facings with the neckline or the lapel, making sure that you match the shoulder and back seams and the lapel notches. Okay, after doing that, pin and sew in place. Take your time while sewing this, especially around the shoulder area. Do not create a sharp line from the back neckline to the front. Rather, sew a slight curve around the shoulder while you're bringing the seam from the back to the front. After sewing, clip around the neckline and the lapel to allow ease and to prevent bunching when you turn this over. Also trim down the lapel edge so that it's a nice pointy edge, and also the corner between the shoulder and the back neckline where it is stitched to reduce the bulking and for it to lay down nicely. After doing all that, turn the lapel to the right side and give everything a good press to lay it flat, and also just press your lapel outward. The break point for the lapel is at the hemline, but this might change when you put it on and adjust it to your bust size. Ensure that you have cut and spread the sleeve according to the guide on the instruction manual, and then you have to gather the top of the sleeve to fit the armhole or to fit the dropped shoulder. To gather, you can gather by sewing running stitches using the hand sewing needle and thread, and then tie one end and pull the thread to gather the fabric, or you can use a sewing machine to have a neater gather or a more even gather. By sewing 2 rows of straight stitch using the longest stitch length on your sewing machine, and then pull on the bobbin thread to gather the fabric. After gathering, pin the sleeve and the armhole right sides together and sew using 1/2 inch seam allowance. I would advise that you sew this with the gathers on top so that you can also just even things out and you would have folded gathers underneath. After sewing this, finish the raw edges and press your seam to have everything neat. The next thing to do is to sew the side seams. Place the side seams together, that is your sleeve and your armhole right sides together. Pin this and sew using half an inch seam allowance as you've done for the other seams, and then finish the raw edges and press this towards the back. Next, with right sides touching, fold the bottom of the sleeve in by 1/4 inch and then by 1/2 inch, or however wide your elastic band is. I'm using a 3/4 elastic band, so I'm just gonna fold this in by 1 inch. Stitch close to the fold that you've just created and leave about 1 inch to insert your elastic. So leave about 1 inch opening to insert your elastic band. After sewing this, take your elastic band and wrap it around your wrist without stretching it to determine how long to cut your elastic band. And after determining this, add about 1/2 inch to that length to create ease and also for overlapping the elastic band to close it. To insert your elastic band into the elastic casing, attach a safety pin to one end of the elastic band and then string it through the casing that you've just created at the hem of the sleeve, and just pass it through, ensuring that you're not twisting the elastic band as you go, and then bring it out from the other end and pin it, making sure that it's not twisted, like I said. After this, place the elastic bands together or overlap it by 1/2 inch and stitch it with a zigzag stitch. When that's done, tuck the elastic band into the casing and sew that opening closed. Finally, give your sleeve a final press and you're done with the sleeve, and you can repeat all the steps for the other side of the bodice. That's for the other sleeve. Moving on to the waistband. The waistband might seem tricky, but it is actually very easy. Just take your time and use lots of pins. So just for recap, remember that we have 4 waistband pieces for the front and 4 waistband pieces for the back. 2 of the front pieces are interfaced and 2 of the back pieces are interfaced. So I just want you to keep this in mind as we move on with the instructions. So place the 2 interfaced back waistband together and join at the center back using the 1/2 inch seam allowance. Place the 2 interfaced front waistband pieces right sides together on either end of the back waistband pieces, the one that's interfaced, and sew up the side seams. You need to press this open and do the same for the uninterfaced waistband pieces. So that means interfaced waistband to interfaced waistband and uninterfaced waistband to the uninterfaced front waistband. So this is how it looks. So you have your back waistband in the middle, and then you have your front waistband on either side of the back waistband. So that's how it should look. When you're done sewing the front waistband to the back waistband, you are now going to place the interfaced and the uninterfaced waistband pieces right sides together. Remember now that you have a long waistband piece, so place those 2 together, right sides together, and then pin at the extreme ends, and you're going to sew these ends closed. When you're done with that, it's time to attach the waistband to the bodice first. Place the outer interfaced waistband on the bodice with right sides together, and make sure that you're matching the back seam, the side seams, as well as the notch in front. Pin the waistband all the way, and you should ensure that the ends of the waistband should match at the tip of the bodice where the lapel breaks. So when you've pinned your outer waistband, the one that's interfaced, on the bodice right sides together, now you're going to take the uninterfaced waistband and place it at the inside of the bodice, with the right side of the interfaced waistband facing the wrong side of the bodice. Again, make sure you're lining up the side seams and the center back, and then pin this all along the bodice. So this is how it should look like right now. The bodice will now be sandwiched between the outer interfaced waistband and the inner uninterfaced waistband. So once that is all pinned in place, you're going to sew through all 3 layers of the fabric, and when you're done sewing, you're going to press this nicely so that you have a clean finish at the waist. Don't forget that the front placket pieces should be interfaced, so if you haven't done that, you can do that now. After interfacing, place one raw edge of the placket on the front skirt and align the raw edges together. Pin and sew in place with a straight stitch. Once you're done with that, press the seam allowance towards the placket and then fold in the other raw edge by 1/2 inch and press this. Pin in place and top stitch the edge of the placket. Repeat this for the other front placket. Once you're done with that, let's focus on attaching the pockets to the skirt. Before we do that, place the back skirt pieces right sides together and pin and sew along the center back seam and finish the raw edges. Okay, before we go on to sew the pocket, I would also advise that you finish the raw edges of the pockets with a zigzag stitch or overlock it. After doing that, take one of your pocket back pieces and lay it right sides together on the skirt front, aligning the top of the pocket piece with a top notch on the skirt, and pin this in place. Repeat this for the other side of the front skirt as well as both sides of the skirt back pieces. Stitch the pocket pieces in place with 3/8 of a seam allowance. This is so that when we close the side seams, the pocket will sit slightly inside and create a more discreet finish. After doing that, press the pocket seams open so that the right sides are all facing outward, and then understitch the seam to the pocket. This adds to the neatness of the pocket and prevents it from showing on the outside of the dress. Next, lay the front skirt pieces and the back skirt pieces right sides together with the pocket sticking outward. Pin all around the side seams and around the pockets and down to the hem of the skirt. Now you're going to sew down the side seams till you reach the pocket and round the pockets as well as down to the hem. Now it's time to hem the skirt. To make it easier to hem curved surfaces, you need to sew about 1/2 inch away from the raw edge along the skirt hem. When you're done doing that, you need to turn the hem along the line that you just created and press it in place. After doing that, you can turn that hem in again by 1/2 inch one more time and then press, pin and top stitch to close up the hem. Now it's time to join the skirt to the bodice. To do this, place the bodice over the skirt with right sides together. Line up the side seam and the center back seam on the top edge of the outer waistband. The outer waistband, not the inner waistband that is not interfaced. Also take note that the waistband does not extend all the way to the center front of the skirt. Okay, it's about halfway to the front of the skirt. Now take this to your sewing machine and sew the outer waistband to the skirt using 1/2 inch seam allowance from the raw edges. Also, don't forget that you should only be sewing the outer waistband to the skirt and not the inner waistband. After doing that, press the seam inwards towards the waistband and away from the skirt, and then you're going to fold the inner waistband that you did not sew over the seams to enclose the waistband seam that you just finished. You can hand sew or pin the waistband in place and do a top stitch on the right side of the garment. To make it faster, I like doing a top stitch, but if you want a neater finish, you can take your time to do slip stitches to close up the waistband and the skirt. Now you're done attaching the bodice to the skirt as well as hemming it, it's time to insert your buttonhole and your buttons. The pattern has buttonhole and buttonhole placement marks, but in case you forgot to mark yours, you can always draw it on the fabric and add as many buttons as you want. First, measure up your button. My button is 1 inch in diameter, so I'm going to mark that on my fabric and add about 0.2 inches to the button measurement so that the button can pass through the buttonhole quite easily. So I'm going to draw a 1.2 inch line right in the middle of the placket, and then add perpendicular lines at the top and at the bottom of this buttonhole opening. This will help you figure out where to start and stop the stitching of the buttonhole. The distance between the buttonholes should be about 2 inches depending on how big your buttons are and how many buttons that you want to add. Also note that the buttonhole on the placket are vertical, however the one on the waistband is horizontal. To make a buttonhole, follow your sewing machine's guide on how to make a buttonhole. You can also do this manually, but it's easier to do it with a machine that has a buttonhole feature. The general order for sewing the buttonholes on the sewing machine is to first of all sew the top back track and then sew down the right side, sew the bottom back track, and finally up to the left side. When you're done doing this, open up your buttonholes using a seam ripper, a razor blade, or whatever tool that you have. To mark the position of the buttons, it's usually in between the buttonholes. So just place your plackets together and making sure everything's aligned, and then mark your buttonholes to be placed in between the buttons. You can sew on any buttons you like, and buttons are quite easy to sew. Just pass in the thread through the fabric and through the buttonholes several times, and then tie a knot at the back. Secure the wrap dress. Final thing to do is to install fast snappers. This is optional if the dress fits fine on you and you don't need to have extra security on the inside. You can leave this step out. However, if you just want it to be secure, install fast snappers on the center front, and also at the tip of the other side of the waistband. I advise you to put on your dress to determine where to place the fast snappers on inside to make sure that it fits you well. However, make sure that you're also aligning the button plackets so that you not have anything offset. Once you're doing that, you're done with your Temi dress or your Temi top or whatever version that you made. It is quite easy to sew. You just need to take your time with the steps and enjoy the sewing process. And that's it, the Temi dress is done. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section and I'll be sure to answer your questions. If you'd like to purchase a Temi pattern, the link to the shop is in the description box. And yeah, that's it. Don't forget to like this video, share this video, and subscribe to the channel for more sewing content. I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.